Right now, an ancient Egyptian is opening his eyes. He has no idea that 4,000 years later, millions of people will know about his civilization, but almost nobody will know about his life. Not the pharaohs, not the pyramids, just the ordinary people who actually made ancient Egypt work. So today, we're changing that. We're going to follow one average Egyptian throughout an entire day, from the moment the sun wakes him up to the moment he falls asleep, and along the way, you'll discover that his life was surprisingly similar to yours, just with a lot more bread and a lot more beer. Because despite what the movies tell you, the average Egyptian wasn't building pyramids all day. They weren't consistently worshipping gods or wandering around giant temples in white robes. Most people had jobs, deadlines, families, taxes, and surprisingly, a lot of their daily routine would feel weirdly similar to yours. Waking up. The first thing that wakes him isn't an alarm clock. It's the sun. Ancient Egypt basically ran on daylight. Once the sun rose over the Nile, the day had already begun. His bed? Not exactly memory foam. Most people slept on woven reed mats or simple wooden beds if they were wealthier. Pillows weren't soft either. They often rested their heads on curved wooden or stone headrests. Imagine trying to get a good night's sleep with what looks like a carefully carved brick under your neck. And before he even thinks about work, he's already swatting mosquitoes. The Nile gave Egypt life, but it also gave everyone insects. Now, it's time to get dressed. If he's poor, he's putting on a simple linen kilt. If he's wealthier, maybe cleaner, finer linen. Forget colorful wardrobes. White linen ruled Egypt because it reflected the brutal heat. And honestly, wearing black in the Egyptian sun would have been a terrible decision. And before leaving, he'll probably shave. This surprises a lot of people. Many Egyptians disliked body hair. Men often shaved their heads and faces completely, not just because of the heat, but because lice were a constant problem. Those iconic hairstyles you see in museums, many were actually wigs. Imagine spending an hour making your wig look perfect before walking outside to 40-degree heat. Breakfast. Well, sort of. Breakfast isn't exactly exciting. No pancakes, no cereal, no bacon. Instead, bread. Again, ancient Egyptians absolutely loved bread. Historians believe that they made dozens of different varieties, although different varieties often just meant different shapes and ingredients. Bread was usually eaten with onions, garlic, dates, figs, or beans. And to drink, beer. Yes, beer. Not because everyone wanted to start the day drunk, but because Egyptian beer was often safer than untreated water. It was thick, cloudy, low in alcohol, and probably much closer to alcoholic porridge than the cold beer you're imagining. Even children drank it, just a much weaker version. Imagine showing up to work today carrying a liter of beer and telling everyone, "Relax, it's breakfast." Off to work. Now it's time to earn a living. Here's where the Hollywood gets ancient Egyptian completely wrong. Most Egyptians were not building pyramids. By the time most famous pharaohs ruled, the Great Pyramid had already been standing for centuries. Your job depended entirely on who you were. If our Egyptian is a farmer, his entire life revolves around the Nile. Every year, the river floods, leaving behind rich black soil that's perfect for growing crops. That flood means everything. Too little water, bad harvest. Too much, disaster. No flood at all, potential famine. Farming wasn't just planting seeds, it was a yearly gamble against nature. But maybe he isn't a farmer. Maybe he makes pottery, or builds boats, or carves stone, or brews beer, or maybe catches fish, or carves jewelry, or turns papyrus into one of the most fine writing materials. Or maybe he's one of the lucky few, a scribe. If ancient Egypt had celebrities who weren't royalty, it was scribes. Very few people could actually read or write. That skill alone would completely change your life. Instead of carrying massive stones under the blazing sun, you carried a reed pen. You recorded taxes, business deals, religious texts, letters, government records. One Egyptian school text literally encouraged students to become scribes because every other profession supposedly involved smelling worse than pigs. Some career advice never changes. Lunch and family time. Work wasn't endless. People stopped to eat, rest, talk, and spend time with each other. Family was incredibly important. Children helped around the home from a young age. Women managed households, baked bread, brewed beer, raised children, and in many cases owned property, ran businesses, and could even initiate divorce. That's something many people don't expect. Compared to many ancient civilizations, Egyptian women enjoyed surprisingly significant legal rights. Lunch, usually more bread, vegetables, beans, fish if you ever lived near the Nile, maybe some fruit. Meat, only occasionally. Cattle were valuable. You didn't casually eat your family's wealth on a random Tuesday. Think of meat as more of a celebration food. Although if you worked for wealthy nobles, you definitely ate better than everyone else. Life wasn't always fair, even 4,000 years ago. Free time. Believe it or not, ancient Egyptians actually knew how to relax. Children played with dolls, balls, toy animals, and board games. Adults enjoyed music, dancing, and storytelling. One of the most popular games was Senet. Nobody actually knows every single rule today, but Egyptians absolutely loved it. Some even believed winning had spiritual meaning connected to the afterlife. Imagine Monopoly, except landing on the wrong square might determine your soul's journey after death. People also loved festivals. Religious celebrations filled cities with food, music, drinking, and enormous public processions. These weren't quite ceremonies, they were huge events. Think of them as a combination of a parade, a concert, and a public holiday, except everyone genuinely believed the gods were watching. Evening. As the sun disappeared, so did most work. Without electric lights, staying productive after dark wasn't exactly practical. Homes were lit by small oil lamps. Families gathered together, they repaired tools, prepared tomorrow's food, talked, told stories, prayed, and eventually slept. But before drifting off, there was always uncertainty. Ancient Egypt wasn't an easy place to survive. Disease, dangerous animals, floods, failed harvests, injuries. Life expectancy was much shorter than today. Tomorrow was never guaranteed, which made every successful day matter just a little more. Our Egyptian never became famous. Nobody carved statues of him, nobody built temples in his honor. His name was almost certainly to be forgotten. But without millions of ordinary people just like him, ancient Egypt would never have become one of history's greatest civilizations. When we think of Egypt, we think of pyramids, golden masks, mummies, gigantic statues, but almost nobody has actually lived that life. Most people simply woke up, ate breakfast, went to work, complained about work, spent time with family, played games, laughed with friends, and hoped tomorrow would be a little easier than today. The biggest difference wasn't that they were completely different from us, it's that they managed to build one of history's greatest civilizations without any of the conveniences we complain about losing for 10 minutes. So next time your Wi-Fi cutouts, just remember, at least you're not trying to write tax records on papyrus while drinking breakfast beer and hoping the Nile doesn't flood away your entire year's harvest. And honestly, that's probably a pretty good day.